Hey, fourth graders. So today we are going to practice summarizing. When we're summarizing, it's basically a form of retelling a story or a part of a story. And we want to remember a few things about summarizing. First of all, you don't want to tell every single detail in the story, right? You're picking out what's the most important parts. Usually a summary is short, like up to maybe about 5 sentences when you're summarizing a story. So again, you're not telling everything that happened. You're wanting to think who was in the story, where did this story take place, and what were the important things that happened. Okay, so that's really what we want to look at when we're summarizing. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read to you one chapter out of a book. It's called Tales from the Odyssey. This book is written by Mary Pope Osborne, and this is actually part 2 of the book. So I'm just picking a chapter. We're going to read the chapter, and then we want to think about what would we say for a summary. So who are the characters? Where is the setting? Where's the story taking place? And what important events are happening in this chapter? All right, so this is chapter 8, The Voyage. With his hands gripping the rudder, Odysseus skillfully guided his craft over the waves. He never slept. All night he kept his eyes fixed on the stars that Calypso had told him to watch, the Pleiades and the Bear. Day after day and night after night, Odysseus sailed the seas. Finally, on the 18th day, he saw the dim outline of mountains on the horizon. As Odysseus steered his craft toward the shore, dark clouds gathered overhead. The water began to rise. The wind began to blow until it was roaring over the earth and sea. Has Poseidon discovered my craft? Odysseus wondered anxiously. Does he now seek his final revenge? For many years, Poseidon, mighty ruler of the sea, had been angry with Odysseus for blinding his son, the Cyclops. Now it seemed he was trying to destroy Odysseus once again. The wind roared from the north, south, east, and west. Daylight plunged into darkness. Odysseus feared he was about to come to a terrible, lonely end. Suddenly, an enormous wave crashed down on Odysseus's raft. Odysseus was swept overboard and pulled deep beneath the sea. He struggled wildly to raise his head above the water and breathe. When his head finally broke the surface, Odysseus saw his craft swiftly moving away across the water. He swam as fast as he could toward the wooden craft. He grabbed the timbers and pulled himself aboard. Then, as the wind swirled the raft across the water, Odysseus saw an astonishing sight. A sea goddess was floating like a gull on top of the waves. Seemingly impervious to the great storm, she floated near his raft and climbed aboard. My friend, she said, I'm Ino, the white goddess who guides sailors in storms. I know not why Poseidon is angry with you, but I know this. For all the torture he has inflicted upon you, he will not kill you. But you must leave your raft at once and swim for the shore. Take my veil, for it is enchanted. You will come to no harm as long as you possess it. As soon as you reach land, you must throw it back into the sea. With these words, the white goddess removed her enchanted veil and gave it to Odysseus. Then she disappeared back into the wild seas. At that moment, a huge wave crashed down on Odysseus's raft, ripping it to pieces. Clutching Ino's veil, Odysseus pulled himself onto a wooden plank and rode it as if it were a horse. Then he dove down into the sea. Suddenly, all the winds died down, except the north wind. Odysseus felt that Athena was holding the other winds back so he could swim safely and swiftly to some distant shore. For 2 days and 2 nights, with the north wind gently flattening the waves before him, he swam and floated on the calm sea. On the 3rd day, the north wind died away and the sea was completely calm. Odysseus saw land ahead. With a burst of joy, he swam toward the rocky shore. In an instant, the wind and waves returned. With a thundering roar, sea spray rained down on him. Odysseus struggled to keep his head above the churning water, seeking a place to go ashore. Angry waves were pounding the reefs with great force. I'll be dashed against the rocks if I try to swim to shore now, he thought desperately. But once again, Odysseus felt the presence of Athena. A giant wave picked him up and carried him over the rocks toward the beach. But before Odysseus could crawl ashore to safety, another wave dragged him back into the sea and pulled him under the water. Odysseus swam desperately, escaping the waves pounding the shore. Soon he came to a sheltered cove. He saw a river bank free of rough stones. As he swam toward the bank, he prayed to the gods to save him from the angry attack of Poseidon. Suddenly the waves were still. But when Odysseus tried to haul himself ashore, his body failed him. He had been defeated by the storm. It had ripped his flesh and robbed his muscles of their strength. When he was passing in and out of consciousness. Gasping for breath, he pulled off Ino's veil and threw it back into the sea. Then he used his last bit of strength to drag himself out of the water and throw himself into the river reeds. If I lie here all night, I shall die from cold and damp, he thought. If I go further ashore and pass out in a thicket, wild beasts will devour me. No matter what evils lay ahead, he knew he had to push on. On bleeding hands and knees, he crawled to a sheltered spot under an olive tree, a tree sacred to the goddess Athena. Odysseus lay down in a pile of dead leaves. With his bloody hands, he spread leaves over his torn body. Like a farmer spreading ashes over the embers of his fire, he tried to protect the last spark of life within him. Mercifully, the gray-eyed goddess slipped down from the heavens and appeared at his side. She closed his weary eyes and pulled him down into a sweet sleep that took away his pain and sorrow. All right. So that's a really interesting chapter in the book. This is a really interesting series of books that is based off of some Greek mythology. So that's where you're hearing about like Poseidon and Athena. Those are Greek gods and goddesses that you hear about in Greek mythology. Super interesting series. And for anybody who's an adult listening, you might recognize Odysseus from Homer's The Odyssey. This is a readaptation of the Odyssey written for children. So anyway, let's think about the summary. Now, remember, we want to think who was in this story. So our main character is Odysseus, right? He is definitely somebody that you'd want to talk about. We also had Ino, who helped Odysseus. He talked about Poseidon, although we didn't actually see Poseidon in this part of the story. We could see the effects of Poseidon, and then also Athena. Okay, so those were the characters. The setting was in a storm in the sea, right? It was in a storm in the sea with an island in the far off distance. And what were some of the main things that happened? Well, the big storm came up and Odysseus's raft that he was floating on was destroyed. The goddess Ino came and helped Odysseus by giving him her magical cape that helped him to get safely to shore. We know that Athena was helping to guard Odysseus by giving him a good wind to help him get to shore in calm seas. And that when he was getting to shore, it seemed like there was this battle between Athena, who was trying to help Odysseus, and Poseidon, who was trying to hurt Odysseus when he was trying to get in. But he finally got to shore and he was able to rest with the help of Athena. Okay, so we were kind of thinking about the main things that were happening in there. I didn't tell every single little detail, right? When I was summarizing, I kind of told the main things. You can have an understanding of what happened without having read the whole chapter. So a summary is a really important skill to have. Summarizing is an important skill to have because it is something that you'll use a lot, right? If you're talking about a movie or a TV show or a book or whatever, you want to be able to give a short description of it without telling every single detail. Maybe your friend wants to see the movie that you just saw, but they don't want to know everything that happened because they want to see it themselves, right? Summarizing also helps you to be able to put into words what happened, and it helps us to see if you understand what happened or not. If you can't summarize what happened, it's likely because you didn't really understand what happened. So summarizing is a good skill for you to use with your learning coach and helping them to see, did you understand the chapter or the story that you just read, or do we need to maybe go through it? Maybe we need to look up some of the vocabulary words that were in it and make sure that you really understood what was going on. Maybe there's some more background knowledge that you need before you could understand that completely. Okay, so again, that was just one example of summarizing. When you're summarizing, you want to think about the who, the where, and the what. The who, the where, and the what. Who is in the story, in that section of the story, whatever it is you're summarizing, where and when did it take place, and what happened? What were the main events that happened? I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.